Okay. So December 14, 1996. We are here to celebrate Gary Ernst's birthday, and we stopped in Casa de Fruta before we get to the particular
so
park.
it's one thing or the other. It's either raining or the sun's shining. The first stop is going to be a conglomerate locality not too far down the road here, which is a place where everyone can kind of get a sense of just how deformed some of these rocks actually are. They're underformed, perhaps, what everybody can see. And then we're going to stop and see a famous greenstone that Gary worked on many years ago, and there's a little bit of the melange that can be seen. Then, as we go further up, we're going to stop at the absolute world-famous pegmatitic jadeite locality. A very, very important occurrence that everyone needs to see sometime in their lifetime. And then if you're a metamorphic petrologist and you haven't been there, you've missed something. 20 kilometers depth, which has, along the contacts here, juxtaposed against almost all the way around it, upper Cretaceous sediments of the Great Valley. So we've got definitely a relationship where these things have come up, and there's
only this one right here. I don't know how many of you can see that from here. Here's the Diablo Range, all that big thing, and well, you can't really see it very well from here. There's a big spot in here, another one in here, a couple little ones down there. They're little spots, sort of, that are the real high pressure that have jaded pyroxene and metamorphic aragonite. And the area in between is albite-bearing metagraywacke. Sometimes contains a little bit of scattered lawsonite, sometimes it's pompelliite, sometimes you don't see anything for a calcium aluminum silicate. And so the question is, are these isogrades separating the higher pressure rocks from the lower pressure rocks? I initially thought perhaps so, and I mapped things with little dotted contacts and question marks saying it might have been an isograde. But I think now Clark Blake was probably right. Most of them are tectonic contacts, sort of imbricated sequence, and we have higher pressure slabs juxtaposed with lower pressure slabs.
Can you ever see those contacts actually?
They're not really well exposed. The problem
one
is let me do that. And I always thought, no, I don't map faults unless I see them. Of course, the Ortigalita fault over here, we all map, and none of us ever see it, except from an airplane. You know, so that's kind of the way it is. Sorry.
Oh, involved out here a bit is what is the nature of those contacts. At least one of these road cuts we're going to go to, I believe we will see two critical contact relationships as good as they are anywhere out here. And one of them has to do with the chert and the relationship with the graywacke and the greenstone, and the other one is the contact with the greenstone and the graywacke. And the basic points of debate have been, is it a fault contact or is it something else? And I'm convinced we'll see enough at that people should come.
Yeah, cherts, some of the cherts and the metabasalts do have a paleoequatorial fauna and magnetic latitude. But whoever said the cherts and pillow lavas below them were not far traveled? We always believe that. That's a fundamental tenet of plate tectonics, the convergent suture. Charles, do you remember this next outcrop we're going to, the chert outcrop? Do you remember the deal with Peter Bell?
Yes, I remember that.
I can imagine you would.
Yeah,
that was pretty terrible.
That's first place.
Greenstone, no?
I mean, you probably did that later. Remember, you were here another year.
Yeah, but I didn't map that. Secchi and Lukey mapped that.
Yeah, but I don't think I don't remember
I really
that
want to see it best.
first summer spending this time down
No, don't you remember? We let them do that side. We started mapping close to the pass.
Right, we walked up wherever this, along the Artiga fault.
Yeah.
You know, you could finally see, you could see
Little
strips
serpentine.
serpentine.
Not very much though. It was
No,
mostly
but I do remember seeing
gopher
it.
holes and stuff like
I
that.
do remember seeing it. I mean, at least it was there.
Oh yeah, it was there.
We actually recorded from the memoir in 1970.
I don't know where it was, whether it was in streamers or what, but you'll see several different compositions of harmony.
I believe we see that.
Absolutely. Well, actually, down in the creek bottom, there are a little better examples, more persuasive. As I said before, you came up, Mike. These are not particularly persuasive, but they are pillows, I think. Yeah. Oh yeah, you're right, Mark. Two of the 4 samples have relic objects.
Okay.
Anyway, it's still called jadeite pegmatite locality. The jadeite, modal percent of jadeite is about 35 or 40% here. There's white mica, chlorite, little still phenomeline, no albite in this rock, or very little. I won't say there aren't traces in a few places. But while this is the jadeite pegmatite locality, all the rocks in the quadrangle has been mapped contain some jadeite, except in the very northwest corner. There is a terrain there, a terrain boundary with unit that only contains pompelliite, no lawsonite. Oh, I forgot to mention lawsonite, a couple modal percent in most of these rocks. No shale chips or rock fragments left in these rocks. These are so recrystallized that now the original detrital materials are mostly converted to layer silicates, like chlorite and white mica and stuff like that. At least that's my recollection.
In terms of the thermal history of a subduction zone, there's two factors. One is the timing. It goes down. If it's early after subduction starts, then PT pass, something like that. If it's later, it's something like that. So we got just the time. Then we got the other issue is where are you in this thing? And if you're right up near the hanging wall, which is the heat source, early on, well then you get cooked and it looks schistose. If it's later on, well, anywhere you're in there is going to be cold.
Don't you have to be up?
But you'll get a gradient from here to here.
At the top?
Well, no, but see, early on, when subduction starts, our isotherms look something like that, but you keep it going at 5-10 centimeters per year, eventually the isotherm, drop down like that.
Yeah, but I think it's too simplistic view.
The thermal calculations tell us this.
Yeah, but look, I mean, the structure is completely unknown of this whole thing, I think. And if you don't know in terms of structure where you are, see what we got here.
You get a certain amount of section there, and then it decouples from the downgoing oceanic crust cap slab and gets sort of sequestered in this accreting prism. And I have mapped the section here as consisting of a series of bedding plane faults shown with dotted lines, incidentally, because I've never really seen those contacts. But as on the cross section, you can see it's a kind of a layer cake stratigraphy with individual layers bedding plane faults. And you may or may not choose to believe that. I mapped this initially with Charlie Gilbert as a stratigraphically coherent section. But what worried me always, I remember even at the time, how on earth do you have cherts in a gray waxy section? How can you do that? And what Clark Blake said, look, you got these greenstones in there at the base. And why would there only be a tiny bit? We never see very much. Doesn't that seem strange, too? There's just a little bit of greenstone and then chert on top of it. Doesn't that make you think of something else? Well, of course, ultimately I came around to the idea of it happened. The Franciscan on the west is a jaded pyroxene-bearing meta-graywacke, and you ought to be able to see the jadeite now that you've had all this experience. There is a layer. It's sort of a bright green that you can see. That is, by individual cars, we don't have to. slackers or laggards will go individually back to Palo Alto.